lies whether, beyond better enforcement, there is a need to update our consumer protection framework to address some of the concerns identified more effectively. And this is just one of the angles we are studying prior to our reply, which is due, as you know, for the end of July. So this is why at this stage we are not taking a position on the specific solution proposed. We are carefully analyzing all dimensions of this initiative, and I'm sure that many of the exchanges today will bring us new avenues for reflection. So thank you, Mrs. Chair. We are now very much looking forward to the presentation of the organisers, and, of course, of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introductory statements. Indeed, we are very much looking forward to the discussion. As I said, such a citizens' initiative are vital instruments of participatory democracy, enriching the debate by bringing citizens' voices directly into the legislative process. I hope that discussion today will help us to ensure that innovation continues to serve both creators and users fairly. The organizers of the initiative are presented today. With us we have Mr. Daniel Ondruska, welcome, Mr. Ross Scott, Mr. Moritz Maximilian Kanzner, also welcome to you gentlemen, Mr. Alberto Hidalgo Cerizzo and Mr. Marcin Barkzik. Welcome to all of you, and according to the program we have around 15 minutes for your introductory remarks, starting with Mr. Ondruska. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Daniel Ondruska and I am the representative of the ECI Stop Destroying Video Games. And for our purpose, it stands in the title, honestly. We are trying to prevent video games from being destroyed. We see video games not only as part of our culture, but also as products, and in both cases worthy of preservation. But unfortunately, the practices in the video games industry are hindering both of these and threatening video games as a medium. What we hope to achieve today for you is to explain the problem, what we have done to try to fix it at least, and why we believe new regulation or new rules are necessary. Just as it was mentioned in the beginning, we are representing European customers and consumers who have not had a voice on this issue for a very, very long time, and therefore we are very, very thankful that you are hearing us out today. And I would say that we could start with the slide deck, and I would then hand over to my colleague Ross Scott.
Hello, I am the founder of the Stop Killing Games consumer movement, which has many shared goals with the initiative. I'd like to clarify what it means to destroy a video game. The second slide. When we say a game has been destroyed, what we mean is a publisher has permanently disabled all copies of it that have been sold so no one can ever play them again. It would be like removing every single copy of a book or film in existence, effectively erasing it from the culture. The way this practice works is first a publisher sells a copy of a video game. However, it has been designed so that it must connect to the publisher in order to function. This acts as a potential kill switch. The customer is also given no information when the game will stop working, even though the publisher has decided to assume that responsibility. Then, after an undisclosed length of time, the publisher disables all existing copies of the game but keeps the customer's money. The publisher also enacts countermeasures to ensure repairing the game. To ensure repairing the game is almost impossible, even for experienced software professionals. From this point onward, no customer can ever run the purchase again. Besides destroying the game, this practice is also subverting customer expectations. Most video games can work indefinitely, which has been the customer standard for half a century, including ones that connect to the internet. Alternately, a small number of video games operate as subscription services, but those inform the customer exactly when their access ends at the time of payment. The games we're referring to do no such thing. It's a bit of miscommunication. They almost always contain terms stating they can end at any time for any reason. What this means is customers have no real protections when they buy games like these. They are unable to keep them and they are not informed when they will end. This behavior would be outrageous in other industries. If you bought a book in a store, the publisher cannot come into your home and take back your book at will. If you bought an insurance policy, you would be informed when that policy ends, not that the seller could end it at any time for any reason but still keep your money. The games being sold this way are operating similar to scams. Publishers know customers expect video games to last, so they sell these in the same way as ones that can work forever, as a one-time purchase with no expiry date, then price them the same. Publishers know that if customers were informed exactly when they plan to disable their games, that would reduce sales, since the longevity of a game affects how much customers are willing to pay. The industry is trying to have it both ways, finding ways to say they're selling you a game that they're not selling you. This creates confusion for everyone involved and is part of why it's taken customers so long to get exposure on this practice. The legality is also unsettled. Earlier, members of Parliament assisted us in asking questions to the EU Commission about how legal the terms and game license agreements were, especially being able to terminate them at any time for any reason. The Commission stated Directive 93/13 EEC prohibits unfair terms causing a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations to the detriment of consumers. The Commission also recommended consumers file complaints with businesses across member states through the European Consumer Centers Network. In 2024, we had volunteers across the majority of EU countries submitting complaints against the French company Ubisoft for disabling the game The Crew. The responses we received from the ECC network were extremely inconsistent. Some officials said there was nothing they could do. Others said the company was required to run the game indefinitely, which is unrealistic. But the majority stated there was no clear regulation on this practice. We were independently able to get thousands of complaints submitted to consumer agencies in France and Germany, but there still has been no decision on them on the legality either. To the best of our knowledge, no one in the EU has ever been compensated for this and hundreds of other titles. In short, governments in EU countries are not sure how to handle this situation, and customers are overwhelmingly not being compensated for the loss of their purchases. It is an ideal situation for clear regulation. This is not a new practice. It started approximately 2005 and began negatively impacting customers for them around 2010 onward. However, it often affects a minority of customers whose complaints can get lost in the system. It wasn't until a large case affecting millions that any attempts to get government attention were possible, and there still is no answer. The EU Commission says this must be handled on a case-by-case basis, but this practice is extremely widespread. Future slides. We have formed an amateur study examining over 1,100 video games that require a connection to the publisher. The majority of these have been deliberately disabled by the publisher, with many of the rest still at risk of being destroyed. Under the strictest interpretation of what it means to disable a game, the study found that out of over 400 titles, publishers disable a customer's purchase 93.5% of the time when ending support. This business practice is responsible for more destruction to the medium than anything else by an enormous margin. There is also a strong correlation between this practice and the size of the publisher, as most small studios do not engage in it, as it requires far more resources, work, and liability than they can handle. So even though this impacts a minority of games, it disproportionately affects customers due to the scale of the largest offenders. From sales figures, it impacts tens of millions of customers, minimum in the EU. This impacts developers as well. This may seem obvious, but based on interviews and feedback, we found the majority of game developers do not support having games they've worked on destroyed. They can spend years of their lives creating them, but they are often not the ones making these business decisions, and sometimes even sign non-disclosure agreements so they cannot voice their opinion on the matter. The main point I hope that does not get lost in this hearing is this initiative welcomes any solution that will solve the problem of video games being destroyed on this scale. We want this to be as easy and as practical as possible for all parties involved and are very open to how that is achieved. We are not even asking publishers to change their business or monetization models, only that once they end support, they do so in a responsible way. Our only goal is to prohibit this destructive practice and thus obtain basic protections for consumers and the medium as a whole.
Next, I would like to address the honourable members on a huge issue that we faced during the campaign, especially the start of the campaign, the fact that the whole discussion is very unclear because the technical solutions are so difficult and there's also a lot of pushback by the industry. So I'd like to raise to some proposals we've seen from the industry to masquerade as proposals, but are simply unrelated to our issue wholly. Some examples of these are clear labelling, minimum support times, and voluntary end-of-life plans. These are not solutions, nor are these even compromises. They do nothing to fix the problem of games being destroyed in its essence. As far as labelling goes, most customers are aware of the problem, but each game is unique creative work and technical work. There is no substitute for each one any more than a book or a piece of music can be substituted for another. Their uniqueness is the entire appeal. So customers can feel carried into license agreements they would otherwise never agree to because they have no other option if they wish to experience the game. They are agreeing in absence of any alternative to playing games. As for minimum support times, this is unrelated to our issue. The same goes for notices of when games being shut down. We have no problem with publishers ending support at all. Anytime they wish, we only ask that they do so in a responsible and reasonable way. Finally, the option of voluntary end-of-life plans is quite literally the state where we're in now. While we appreciate when this does happen, our research shows it happens only about 4 to 6% of the time, and these conditions are exactly what led to getting over 1 million EU citizens to sign the initiative itself, requesting the EU government to address the problem. Appealing to government is not our first attempt to solve this. There have been multiple attempts coordinating thousands of people to contact companies such as EA or Ubisoft, a European company from France now residing in Canada, so far as back as 2016. In every instance, there was a refusal by companies to allow customers to retain their purchase, in some cases even actively taking their games from their libraries. Next slide, please. A statement made by the European lobby group, Videogames Europe, of which companies like EA, Ubisoft, Roblox and others, so the really big players in the video games industry here in Brussels and globally, are part of, about the movement, has said as much. They not only mischaracterized what was being asked for with endless support, something the movement has never sought, but also claimed one of the reasons for disabling customer purchases is that they represent competition to official versions. I translate this: it is a business model to shut down the game to get players to play their next game. Next slide, please. We're exclusively talking about games where official versions are disabled. In other words, the industry is claiming that customers playing old games could reduce sales for new games, thus they should be free to disable their purchase. Not only do we disagree with this reasoning, but we find this entire stance extremely customer hostile and unacceptable in regards to what the European Union outlines as its purpose and its track record of protecting its consumers and outlining clear market rules, so there is no uncertainty for companies, which could also harm innovation, especially for smaller studios. Their stance has been very consistent that customers are not entitled to keep their games purchases, nor be informed when they will be taken back from them. We're happy to work with publishers in solving this problem in any way that addresses their concerns, but there's been a flat refusal by the publishers, and I must press this: there is no monolithic industry. It is the big publishers in the most part, and even there, from Poland, GOG, the creators of Cyberpunk, are an exception to this issue, large exception to this issue. We have exhausted all other avenues for trying to get this problem solved, hence why we're here today. It is our sincere hope that the honourable members and the Commission are going to be able to find reasonable solutions that for all parties involved.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Your Honors. Thank you for your attention. I'm Professor Alberto Hidalgo Cerezo at University San Pablo CEU, Madrid, a PhD in law, Jean Monnet professor dedicated to consumer law harmonization, especially on digital consumers. I'm a member of European Law Institute as well, among any other associations. We're getting a little bit short on time, so I'll be fast with my intervention. Thank you. It is based on 3 basic points. First one, we've got it on the screen right now. We're seeking for a rebalance, for an adequate consumer protection in the digital single market. We are addressing what we consider an unfair practice. When a game is functional, it should not cease to function as a result of a deliberate and avoidable decision. This raises concerns on planned digital obsolescence, where products are rendered unusable despite remaining technically viable. Under the current framework, national authorities are reaching divergent solutions, which undermines legal certainty for the EU consumers and fragments the digital single market. In the lack of an action, we may end up reaching incompatible solutions among the 27 countries. There is thus a clear need for harmonizing rules, a common European approach necessary to ensure fairness and consistency. Second, please, next slide. Second, European Union as a global leader in consumer protection. Nowadays, it is almost impossible to develop as a full citizen without being a consumer, even more a digital consumer. We all buy goods and services in our daily lives, taking part in the single market with a high level of protection. In the end, it's easy to see, protecting European consumers is protecting European citizens. Primary EU law remains constant in securing a high level of protection for consumers at the maximum legislative level in the EU law. For instance, Charter of the Fundamental Rights of the European Union, Article 38, Union policies shall ensure a high level of consumer protection. Or the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, Article 12, consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defining and implementing other Union policies and activities. Or 169, in order to promote the interest of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumer protection, the Union shall contribute to protecting the health, safety, and economic interest of the consumers. There's a lot more, but we're keeping it easy. What we want to stress is simple. This is a call from the primary EU law that we should not miss. Third and final, real example of the terms and conditions. Now, as proof of the problem, please, next slide. Now, as proof of the problem, here's a real case and user license agreement clause. Company, Zenimax, Bethesda. Game, Fallout 76, clause 7, termination. Zenimax may terminate this end-user license agreement at any time, for any reason. Upon termination by Zenimax for any reason, all licenses granted in this agreement with respect to the game, blah, 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 shall immediately terminate, and you must immediately do point 1 and 2. Point 1, permanently destroying all copies of the game in your possession, and 2, removing the game client from your hard drive. We believe in the end that this practice is unfair for the European consumers and incompatible with the aforementioned articles from the primary EU law. Therefore, we are kindly asking your honors to stop this kind of unfair practices. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Since we're out of time, I'm just going to say that my name is Marcin Baczyk. I'm attorney at law, president of the Intellectual Property and New Technologies section of Krakow Bar Association and member of Legal Tech Institute of the Polish National Bar Association. And I'm here to answer any legal questions, in particular these related to the intellectual property law matter. And I'd like to add that the European Union has a long-standing tradition of advocating for consumer rights. That is why, on behalf of 1.29 million of EU citizens, I ask you to grant both consumers and the cultural heritage in the form of video games to grant the protection they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that concludes your presentations. No, you want to come in again? Okay, thank you so much. So you heard the applause. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you want to come in again. You pressed the button, but I think we listened to all of your arguments perfectly well. And now, of course, we have the moment for the members of the Parliament to come in, ask questions, but also comment. And we start with a round of coordinators for the EPP. I have 3 coordinators, 1 minute each. We start with Axel Voss.
Vielen Dank an alle
Thank you. Thank you to the chairpersons, and thank you also for this presentation. I'm going to be speaking German, as you've noticed. So, from a legal point of view, of course, we're talking about video games as complex goods which are protected by EU copyright law. And therefore, there are various different legal levels which connect them with third parties as well. And so the main question is, how can we ensure continued existence of these goods? How does that square with right holders who have the exclusive right to decide how and for how long their products should be available? So I'm talking about the legal feasibility there. On what legal basis within copyright law could this type of requirement be established? Or are we only talking about legislation covering consumer protection? A more practical point. How should we address this type of situation where continued availability is no longer possible because licenses have run out, for example, for music or other embedded content? I think these questions are really important in order to ensure that every approach is legally founded and can also be implemented in practice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Desde la perspectiva de...
From the point of view of the internal market and consumer rights, I think this is an issue that needs to be investigated. So congratulations to those who've conducted this initiative and also the success. You don't collect 1,000, almost 300 1 million, almost 300,000 signatures every day. I've got 5 children. My 5 children play video games. I don't. But that said, I do understand that this is a problem that needs to be checked through. I think the Commission is quite clear, clear, transparent rules. We need to have evaluation impacts and I'd like to raise another point about fragmentation of the market in terms of solutions which may be introduced by the different member states on this issue which has been raised. But from my own parliamentary group and in terms of the internal market, we are aware of the problem and we're going to monitor it very carefully.
Ja, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, zunächst
Well done first and foremost to the initiators of this. Over 1 million signatures is proof of the huge European interest of this and the importance, also interest from consumers. We need a rule at European level which will clarify the fundamental question whether digital purchase only gives you a fleeting right of use or whether it's something more substantial. So my question is related to the high offline purchase costs raised by industry often, which chokes innovation and could be too much of a financial burden. How do we go about addressing that?
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. Does it mean I have now 3 minutes of the 3 committees altogether?
I was told it's a de Hond thing and you have 2.5 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can really put all your arguments on the table.
Ms. Luxurious, thank you very much. I take this also as a reminder of my past as an IMCO member, despite the fact that I'm here now acting as URI coordinator. Now, first of all, congratulations to the initiative to have reached the 1.3 million signature threshold. The ECI is always put forward as one of those elements that will bring us closer to citizens, but to actually get it done is making it extremely complicated. We only had 12 that were successful, and you reached the threshold already here. Congratulations to that, and that should show to us as lawmakers that what is put forward is of utmost importance. We must take this very seriously, and we should not get lost in legal nitty-gritty. In that context, therefore, my question. In my previous time as an IMCO member, I was responsible for the legislation on the right to repair. And it was just mentioned that the right to repair is not the right approach to the issue at hand. Hence, I would also rephrase it, whether we do not need, in particular for software and digital content, something like a right to resurrect. That in a situation where repair cannot be done, it has to be done in a way that licensing terms and others have to be looked at once they are basically expiring because a game is dead, that we then let it resurrect and have neglected software being reactivated. And whether that is a way to look at it. Also done from a legal term, like we did it with the right to repair. Second, I was wondering whether minimum guarantee periods could help us. Consumer protection law in the EU knows 2 years minimum guarantee period. That won't help here. But we have member states like the Netherlands that have an eternal guarantee period for the functioning of a product. And when we are revising consumer protection rules and we look at minimum guarantee periods, whether the matter could also be addressed by an eternal guarantee period or a longer guarantee period for such products. Third, and that is a different mindset. I like the comparison that you made with books and how we basically would react as citizens 1.0 if something comparable would happen to printed products. Don't we need for video games also something like a Project Gutenberg, something like a public library in which also video games are provided open access as a public service? And from that moment on, we do not look at it anymore from a private angle, but a public service angle. And that is also changing our ways of how to regulate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I had no one from PFE indicated, and we move to Piotr Müller is here. Yeah. For 2 minutes.
Okay. Dziękuję bardzo. Szanowni Państwo, przede wszystkim chciałem pogratulować inicjatorom tej inicjatywy.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I would like to congratulate the initiatives, the people who supported this initiative. A huge number of signatures has been collected and the problem has been understood by the users. My group supports this initiative and trying to regulate these guarantees for players is another slightly different problem. But I'd like to say crystal clear right now that we do support you. Just a couple more words on this sphere. Technology is developing ever faster. Digital services are changing very quickly as well. It's not only about video games producers, it's also about streaming platforms, which are not always fair in their behavior either. Someone buys a product, they're convinced that they should be able to know about all of the guarantees that they have for the product they have bought. And other digital services, even those that lead to various different products being supplied on in different markets within the EU at different prices. It's about localization. That's an issue too. But something which is quite controversial I'd like to comment on briefly. I was thinking about a trade with digital instances and whether it's possible on the platforms. If someone sells a product, they can also trade with their license. I know the platforms don't want that because it would mean a further secondary market for these licenses. Thank you.
Nicola Minchev, our IMCO Vice Chair, and he's connected online for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would like to thank both the authors of the initiative and also the representatives of the European Commission who are present in this committee meeting. So on the 31st of March 2026, the French consumer organization UFC QCR, or sorry for the pronunciation, but the point is that the consumer organization brought a legal action against Ubisoft before court, following the closure of the servers of its online racing game, The Crew. This unilateral decision rendered the game completely unusable, depriving consumers of any use of a game that they had already purchased, without ever having been informed of any expiration date, to put it this way. Will the Commission consider supporting the case on the side of the consumer organization and support a referral to the Court of Justice of the European Union to ask for clarifications on the Unfair Contract Terms Directive, which the Commission previously identified was unclear in situations where a game is unilaterally rendered unusable by the video game publisher? And furthermore, many major video game titles have met the same fate, including Anthem and Concord, leaving European consumers with no recourse. And will the Commission commit to addressing this issue, the issue raised by the Stop Destroying Video Games European Citizens Initiative, through the Digital Fairness Act later this year? And if not, what assurances can the Commission give that this issue will be addressed through legislative action? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. For the Greens, Eva Catarina Vieira.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not usually in any of these committees, but I thought to come for the side quest. It is dangerous to go alone into the digital future without clear consumer protections, and I don't want to set the world on fire, but the truth is that the way we own media has shifted into something that's very sus. Too often, citizens buy a game only to find out that the cake is a lie. You buy a game you hope to cherish for years, but then one day it's suddenly gone. You think, shit, here we go again. When a publisher pulls the plug, we realize that our princess is in another castle. Our libraries are emptied. It's like we've died of dysentery. As we've heard, currently players are forced to see the purchases that they made completely vanish. We should not have to endure and survive a marketplace where our purchases, which are often masterpieces and they bring so much joy, are treated as disposable. We cannot allow digital preservation to take an arrow to the knee. So a petition was started to address all of these issues, and it is super effective. Let us therefore congratulate over 1 million citizens who signed it with one clear message to the EU. Don't be sorry, be better. It's time to finish the fight. We must ensure that even when companies move on, the virtual worlds we paid for remain still alive. Let us praise the sun on a new era of digital rights so that for the gamer of the future, it isn't simply game over. If some colleagues think that I've lost my mind a little bit, these were all video game references. I just wanted to thank the petitioners and say that the Greens EFA group stands here in support and hope that the Commission takes seriously these very practical suggestions that you brought today. Thank you.
I feel so old, I didn't understand your references. Now for 1 minute, Leila Taibi from the left.
Bonjour, merci. Good morning, and thank you very much indeed for the presentation. I'll give you enough time to put your headsets on if you need to. So, thank you to the initiators behind this European Citizens Initiative, for the initiative and for the presentation. The left supports this initiative 100%, and we feel, as you said very clearly, that it's we need a response to the deplorable acts of the people who simply aim at maximizing their profits on the backs of the players, the consumers and the developers. The fact of destroying a video game is a disgrace for the consumer and the player who plays about 80 euros each time when a video game comes out. Add to that all of the microtransactions as well. It's a disgrace also for the developers who have worked for years, and it evaporates forever because of a purely accounting decision. Generally speaking, it's not because games are bad that editors close them down. You were talking about an audio game, a car game beforehand, some of them are part of our cultural heritage. So what would be a playable state for a video game? And our colleague Repassi was talking about a public library with video games. Shouldn't we have a requirement to pay back the virtual objects port and the video game if they are removed, closed down? Thank you.
Yes, and indicated, so we can have a first round of answers. So I give the floor back to the ECI organizers, and you have 10 minutes in total. Probably you can organize yourself internally.
Thank you very much. Am I allowed to? Yeah. So coming at the question regarding the licenses, this is a typical confusion on the topic. An IP right holder is free to commercialize their IP for as long as they want. This is related to how long they want to make profit out of an intellectual property. This is making the following actions: reproduction, this is selling copies, distribution, communication to the public, etc. The consumer is not affected, as the consumer doesn't make reproductions, distribution, communication to the public, etc. He just paid the full price and plays the game. That's all. He doesn't use IP rights. Anyway, IP law is not absolute, we must remind, and I quoted Article 12, consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defining and implementing other union policies and activities. That includes IP as well. We're only asking to not destroy. A consumer keeping her own book, open game, doesn't hurt IP rights, given the fact that he paid a full price for the game in the first place, fulfilling the very goal of IP, which is making profit. That's all. Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I would now answer the question regarding the high cost of offline patches and curbing innovation. We are not asking to preserve games retroactively. What we are asking for primarily is game preservation. So this cannot be retroactive. This has to go into the future. So we ask the publishers to already start with the design process. So to design a game not to be basically switched off and be part of planned obsolescence. From our point of view, of course, if we would grandfather in games, of course, they weren't designed to have that requirement. That's why we are not trying to be unreasonable. Would we want all games to be preserved? Of course. Games that were developed 20 years ago still function. Games that were developed 3 years ago, as it was mentioned before, don't. It's a design decision. It's a business decision. And in terms of curbing initiative, innovation, I'm sorry, but it's always, if you have a golden goose and someone takes it from you or tries to regulate it, you will always say, oh, this will curb my innovation, just as it was, for example, with USB-C and Apple, or how it was with, for example, seatbelts in cars. Before seatbelts were introduced, the whole industry in the 70s or 60s, I believe, was screaming, oh, this will curb our innovation and this will be such a huge problem, and until the regulation hit and we started having seatbelts in our cars, airbags, everything else. We are not trying to engage their business model or create issues for them. They will get their money. They can keep using their business and monetizing however they want. Just please, once you stop supporting the video game, please do not destroy it. And that can be part of the design process. That doesn't have to be part of their business decision. Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit on the economic aspect. Again, when planned for from the beginning, the cost can be very small. It's mostly about when it's undoing that's more of a cost related. Earlier the game Concord was mentioned. That's actually an excellent example because it was publicly stated that at least 370 million euros were spent developing that game, and it did not include an end-of-life plan like what we're seeking. Most of the cost for developing games tends to come from other areas like art assets or marketing. This is just one element out of hundreds that already go into making a game. The other thing is sometimes industry costs or estimates of how much this would cost can be faulty because they're expecting the game they're asking for to have every last feature it did while it was being supported. And many of those can be retired and don't even make sense for a game that's no longer being supported, like administration or anti-cheat measures or account management or things like that. So that can drastically, there can be hundreds, or known as microservices, associated with these that can be disabled and the customer still has the core game. So that should be taken into account when figuring out the potential cost. And it might have been mentioned earlier, but we also want to emphasize the companies have been paid already once for the working game, so that should be factored into the budgeting. There were some other points mentioned on the right to repair, whether we need it and how long a product should work. With right to repair, that's a little bit different issue. Well, that's certainly welcome, having the right to that. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are deliberate countermeasures to prevent repair. That it's almost a small miracle when it does happen from extremely experienced software professionals for resurrecting a game. However, if there were repair instructions, that would be very welcome. I think we would even consider that a viable alternative to what we're asking, if it was practical to resurrect the game that way. And for how long it should work, it's kind of again, the customer standard is indefinitely, as long as they keep the game in good working order on their end. And we're not trying to hold any publishers responsible for updates that break things that wasn't their doing. So how long they choose to support it, we're completely open to. I mean, I think there's already existing EU regulations on that, but I mean, as far as we're concerned, they could end support the next day, but as long as the game isn't destroyed, we would find that acceptable. And the last point on the, for doing this through the existing, just doing this through the courts, through the legal action, that still doesn't get to the heart of the matter of the game itself being destroyed. We're not really refunds and compensation. Those are a secondary measure that when the game itself can't be reinstated, we just want the game preserved. So doing it through the existing framework doesn't quite get us there necessarily.
Maybe if I could add to this, doing this individually for every game in every court, can you imagine? That's why we are asking for regulation and harmonization on a European level, so that we have the same playing field. Choisy was mentioned, legal action in France, there was one game, thousands of players, and it took several years to deal with this. Can you imagine this done 10,000 times in courts? This is not a viable way forward, and that's why we are sitting here.
Very quickly on the right to repair. Sadly, we as consumers don't have remedies of our own. That's the first thing. Second one, end user license agreements prohibit any action. And third, consumers don't even have the right to do so. They don't even have the right to repair their games. It's not included in the directive as it is right now.
I just wanted to answer the questions related to the IP and consumer law. Consumers in the European Union nowadays, these who purchase...
sorry, I think you have to switch it off and you have to switch it on.
No, sorry. I guess you hear me well. Okay, thank you. So I want to address the questions regarding IP and consumer law. Consumers in European Union who purchase digital versions of video games cannot benefit from the same level of consumer protection as those who purchase physical copies. The problem is that the distribution of the physical copies of the video games basically doesn't exist anymore. Even if an individual purchases a disc copy, it often does not contain the entire video game, and it requires connection to the publisher's server. And this only confirms that we live in fully digital era. If Madonna was to re-record Material Girl again, she would sing, we live in the digital world. So, since we all agree that we live in an era in which digital content is distributed digitally without tangible medium, we must also agree that the consumers who purchase digital content, such as video games, must be protected the same or at least similar way as consumers who purchased a physical copy of the video game 10, 15, or 20 years ago. As the Court of Justice of the European Union stated many times, last time it was in case C 174/15 of November 2016, copyright must adapt to new economic developments. And this means nothing less than an obligation to interpret provisions of the EU law in dynamic, progressive manner. And when it comes to the solution, I wouldn't be myself if I wouldn't put a Latin phrase in it. Da mihi factum dabo tibi ius. Give me facts and I'll give you the law. And the facts are that consumers are left without adequate protection when it comes to the digital distribution of the video games. And society faces the risk of permanently losing cultural heritage in the form of video games. And the law, it is created in this very room, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering all the members' questions and also putting some Latin in our European Parliament. We now come to the second round of members and questions and remarks. We start with Peter Agius, EPP, and you now have all 1 minute per person.
Thank you, Chair. Big thanks to the organizers. Very, very smart presentation, very clear. I think you make a point loud and clear for all of us. Protection of consumers online should include protection of gamers online. I have heard in the same committee rooms 100 times that what counts online should count offline, or the contrary. And from the presentations and even from the Commission response, it is clear here we're speaking about unfair contract terms, misleading advertising, producer responsibility, and right to repair. All of these are put into question here. Briefly, I think I also have 3 kids at home, 3 teenagers, all of them are gamers. And there is also a point which is interesting here. There is a point of return on investments as well. Because I noticed that my kids, they spend, let's say, 20 euro, 30 euro to buy a game, sometimes 60 euro to buy a game. Then they spend money on a loot box. Then they spend money to get a shield to fight the trolls better, you know, or to do many other things. So basically, if this game is interrupted, you know, these guys have a stake. So let's find a way of course, promoting the industry and its welfare, because we are interested in that, but finding a good way of protecting also the right to stop destroying video games. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also remember a loot box hearing we had, I think, in the last term here in this committee. Now for SND, Sandro Ruotolo.
Grazie, Presidente. Oggi parliamo...
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we're discussing online video games and therefore also the need to create a safe digital environment for our young people. Europe has certainly made some important steps in the right direction over the last few years, but not all online video games fully fall within the European legislative framework. And so we are calling clearly for clear standards also in this sector. Security from design level, accessible instruments and automatic protections for minors. We've seen positive examples we could base ourselves upon. Think of the European classification system for video games. Because for years it's been helping families and users to find guidance on content, giving clear, transparent classifications. It's a good European practice, but it's not enough now. We need to strengthen it, update it, and bring it into line with developments in online video games. We also have to intervene on business models which exploit the youngest, forcing prices up, mechanisms you pay to win or you pay to progress. Now, they're close to gambling type methods. It's not acceptable. So in the Culture Committee, we think that we should ban these damaging aspects for minors and that for minors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For Renew, Lucas Sieper.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely pressing F for the signatures. Let me maybe be the first MEP here, even though I'm not sure with my colleague from the Greens, to speak as a gamer, not as an MEP that I have been for 20 years. And I've been through it all, what you guys described. And I've seen the good side of it when it was a community that saved Mount and Blade Napoleonic Wars. And I've been through the bad side of it when I bought the crew a few months before they just turned it down. And I think maybe to illustrate the point, even though I also think you already realized that you have big support in this house, to illustrate the point one last time, I think a car, the crew, a car is the perfect example. Just imagine you buy a car, a modern car. Every modern car has software. And after 2, 3, 5, 10 years, the car company decides to turn it down. And you can no longer start the engine. A very good colleague of mine here, sitting here in this room, said you have to stand for what's right because it's right, even though if you're not affected personally. I am even affected personally, so I ask all my colleagues to support this very important initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For SND, Katharina Bali.
Yes, thank you very much. Also from my side, respect for the, ich spreche auf Deutsch, Respekt für die Initiatoren dieser Bürgerinitiative.
A lot of respect for this citizens' initiative, more than 1 million signatures. That's a really great thing to do. And it shows how urgent this matter is. We're talking about a lot of money, more than 46 million of income generated worldwide, and more than music. And then we have a premium even for games which are for over 12s. And the investigation of consumer organizations show that there is a considerable impact, and there's a lot of addictive behavior. And it all costs money, and the money is lost when you can no longer play the games. My question to the Commission, the Digital Fairness Act was mentioned. Is there a need to tackle the issues that we've heard about, or do you feel that existing legislation covers it? As the experts seem to be saying. And the second question, is the Commission going to do something about premium in-game purchases?
Floor back to the organizers of the ECI for 7 minutes.
Well, a lot of support statements, that makes the amount of questions and things actually to address very short. I think the point that was mostly mentioned was microtransactions, gambling inside games, loot boxes, all these kind of concepts that are also already partially addressed in the Digital Fairness Act. Yes, they are absolutely part of the problem. If I buy a game, let's say 60 euros, I know some friends, everyone here likely remembers the game Fortnite. I know some friends formerly from school that put a lot and lots of money into that game and into skins and other contents, and I used my money. I made a commercial transaction, so yes, it needs to be addressed. It is part of the issue. We have free-to-play games that are hugely in this case, Fortnite being one of the examples, but many others. And we have cases where people put in 2,000 euros into skins, and just shutting that down and taking that away is ridiculous. I think that should be all questions or statements.
Maybe your honors would like to know that the Spanish Congress is working on a project of law regarding this matter, the loot boxes, and the current focus is to restrict the commercialization of loot boxes to minors.
Since we're playing ping pong here, I'm going to add something too. We, at this very moment, to this day, in the California State Assembly, a bill that we've worked on is being brought in that also has microtransactions in them. We, in the first place, didn't actually look at them. The California State Assembly brought them in, so there is definitely room to add these things properly and find a good definition. Maybe not saying, okay, this is the product, but is there a commercial transaction going on? to address the issue. That would be an angle that the California State Assembly, for example, took.
Thank you so much. With that, I will give the floor back to the Commission, because there were actually also a lot of questions and also concrete action demands, I would interpret it. So probably you could reply to that.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Anna. 2 points from our side. So first of all, I mean, a big thank you for these exchanges, because I think it really clarifies again, and thank you for the good questions from all the MEPs. And first of all, I mean, indeed, the consumers are not completely unprotected. I mean, I mentioned and we discussed now some of the rules, but what is really important is to address this specific issue that we have now on the table. And that's the reason why with my team, we're really looking at it and in depth and looking at different options. And we are, as you know, at the same time preparing the Digital Fairness Act that was announced by the Commission for the end of this year. Second point was the reference to the ongoing case at national level carried out by UFC Que Choisir, suing Ubisoft for the closure of the game The Crew. There, I mean, the question some of you were asking is whether the Commission will be a party to this case. I mean, as you know, it's a national case, so it follows really the French national legal proceedings, which is distinct really from the process that we have today with this European Citizens Initiative. So I also, Giuseppe, on the copyrights, give the floor to you.
Yes, and thanks very much. Very quickly, and to chip on what Axel Voss, who is the putative father of the copyright in the DSM directive, from a copyright viewpoint, the matter is a little tricky because there is no mandatory licensing imposed on video game developers. They enjoy contractual freedom to commercially exploit their works and determine the terms of their licenses. The framework does not provide for exceptions that cover end of life of a copyright product. Now, having said that, there is a provision in the directive on works that are no longer commercially available and provides for the possibility of licensing such works through collective management organizations and cultural heritage institutions. Now, the problem, as pointed out by Mr. Repasi, is that cultural heritage institutions do not often hold in their libraries video games, and the provisions of the DSM directive of out-of-commerce works, which are set out in Article 8, include a number of conditions which may be difficult to meet for video games. Not the least, the possibility for the video games, for the right holders basically to opt out from the exceptions. Having said that, we are now undertaking a review of the copyright in the DSM directive. We will give it a very good thought, and we will revert fully on this issue in July. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this concludes our hearing. I mean, I can just say that I heard a lot of support from basically all the political groups for your initiative, and I can congratulate you again for the great work you have done, and yeah, all the citizens that were also engaged in the topic. I would just at the end give the floor also to the Vice Chair of PETI again, and then to the Jury Chair if you want to for some concluding remarks, please.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of PETI Committee, I obviously would like first to sincerely thank you everyone for the focused and constructive discussion we just had on the European Citizens Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. And the hearing allowed us to fully listen to and assess the potential of the initiative. I would like to thank all the speakers who have brought further clarity to the issues under discussion. And today we have had the opportunity to understand directly from the organisers, experts and stakeholders about various challenges that arise when video games become unplayable after sale due to discontinued services or disabled access. And this initiative highlights a real concern for millions, and as far as we understand from the presentations, probably hundreds of millions
millions European citizens, ensuring that digital purchases remain functional and that consumer rights are respected in the evolving digital landscape. I trust that the insights shared today will inform our continued work and will provide the European Commission with a clear understanding of the importance citizens attach to this matter. I encourage all participants to maintain the constructive dialogue and to consider the concrete proposals and experience discussed here as we move forward. Thank you once again for the contributions.
Well, thank you very much for your contributions. I can reiterate the broad support from three committees, and also I can reiterate that we will continue to follow this initiative and while we are maintaining the open dialogue with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you.